Well, let's have a look at you.
Sir John Gielgud is one of the world's best-known actors. This scene is from a television movie made in Britain and seen by audiences in the United States and the rest of the world. Hello, I'm Joseph Bendy. The way they make television in Great Britain is very much the way we make it in the United States. But what they make is clearly often very different.
And I'm Shelley Carabell. Some of those differences in programs have made quite an impact on American audiences. See which of these shows seems familiar to you.
Majesty.
Rest you still, old man. God's death, Burley, I command you, rest you still.
What happened?
Well, it took Gibbon 9 volumes to describe the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, and I shall not embark on that.
Aye, but a woman is no fit heir.
Fit only for your bed, it seems.
There are no other women, Anne.
You blow in Miss Jones's ear and you'll be staggered at the results.
Now, you watch your tongue. Not having that sort of talk around here. This is a respectable house. I just don't know how to treat her.
Something the matter, Alex? You seem a bit off color.
How can I make you understand what it was like for me then? I was 22.
Now, you may be surprised to learn that not all of those shows were produced by the national publicly financed network, the BBC, but rather by independent commercial television companies. And we're going to tell you the story of one of those companies, Yorkshire Television.
Look at me when I talk to you! Look at me!
Yorkshire has produced such diverse shows as Glory Guys with Rod Steiger, to David Frost's new series, Through the Keyhole.
Through the keyhole.
They produce game shows.
Tonight on First Tuesday.
And hard-hitting documentaries such as First Tuesday.
20 years ago, nobody would have thought that the plutonium would actually come back to the land.
Yorkshire also produces a complete family of situation comedies for primetime television.
I only want a little talkette with you as your spiritual advisor, perhaps.
Hey, you brute. Come to do that dirty work for them.
Come out of there, you snotty little sinner!
Television between the United States and Britain is more of a family affair than you might imagine. In fact, the successful series All in the Family is one good example, as you'll see on this edition of Focus on Britain. When Americans think of television in Britain, it's only natural that they would think of the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation. Today, the BBC shares the air with a network of 17 independent commercial television stations. But you're right, the BBC did start it all. It began broadcasting 50 years ago on the 2nd of November, 1936.
It's here for everyone to view, conjured up in sound and sight by the magic.
The BBC established a nationwide television network of one channel with no commercials, and much of its budget comes from the license fees that the owners of television sets have to pay every year. But today's television picture in Britain has become more complex. Basically, the United Kingdom is divided into different geographical areas. In addition to the BBC, one commercial television company was appointed to produce and broadcast programs to each region. You'll probably recognize some of the names of those companies. Some shows appear in all areas on a national network. However, London is an exception. There, two companies operate at different times of the week. Today, there are 4 channels for most British viewers, 2 from the BBC and 2 from the commercial networks.
I'm in a recording studio here in Yorkshire Television. And as far as the technical side of things goes, I could just as well be in Los Angeles or in New York. Yorkshire Television studios are located in the north of England, but its audience sometimes extends all the way from Dover to Dundee. It's one of the big 5 broadcasting companies in Britain. In fact, sometimes the audience extends right across the Atlantic Ocean.
Yorkshire Television's audience is really 3 stages. We've got a quite narrow audience of only about 6 million people that we make local programs for. Then we have the national British audience that we make a lot of programs for. hundreds of hours a year of dramas and documentaries and comedies and things, and some educational programs. And then, of course, we hope we have a worldwide audience.
Some successful British television shows have also become successes on American television. For example, All in the Family, Sanford and Son, and Three's Company. So you see, you never know when you're really watching a television show that began here in Britain. Now let's get a good idea of the variety and, in many cases, some of the fundamental differences between television here and what we're used to.
What is the secret of the fakirs of the East?
PBS viewers will recognize Arthur C. Clarke's World of Strange Powers.
I am a very successful businesswoman, and I don't get laughed at much these days.
The romantic drama Love with a Perfect Stranger starred Mary Lou Henner.
Remember, hot air rises. So
Special science programs for children.
to be the hottest?
And original comedies like Home to Roost, better known to American viewers as You Again, starring Jack Klugman.
All the girls have a piece of string, and they leave one end in a tangle in here, and they take the other end and hide. And all the men pick a piece of string and follow it. That way you never know who you're going to find.
And that's why I found her in the airing cupboard.
Yeah. She was at a loose end.
One of the most popular shows in Britain manages to keep viewers down on the farm in prime time. We'll show you how when Focus on Britain continues after these messages.
The British love their soap operas as much as we do. One of the most popular is Emmerdale Farm. It takes place right here in the middle of Yorkshire on what is really a working farm.
For 14 years and more than 1,000 shows, this drama of rural life has attracted 12 million viewers each week. And the unique idea is to use a real Yorkshire village and a real farm as the settings. The story revolves around the Sugden family at Emmerdale Farm.
The Sugden family is a bit like a modern-day Waltons that we used to get over the American program. And Joe's the nearest, I think, to John Boy. For me, it's been a great sort of challenge to go from an 18-year-old callow youth to he's now about sort of 30 years old.
Tell me about your character. Describe her for me. She's an interesting character because she's had a lot happen to her in her life. She had an illegitimate child when she was 18 or so. When she had the baby, she went up to live in Aberdeen with her father. Then she came back again. The baby was adopted. And she's recently lost her mother as well. So, as well as the affair with the married man, quite a lot's happened to her lately.
I play a chap called Alan Turner, who, by English standards, is the JR of Emmerdale Farm. I'm the boss of the big farming combine. And obviously, I'm very unpopular with the locals. I love him. As always, it's much more fun to play a villain than a straight, nice guy. And he is quite nice in a way, because he tries to do all sorts of dreadful villainous things to the village in general, and they're always going wrong. So he turns out to be a bit of a buffoon.
You're accusing me of stealing. That's what all this play acting's been about. You just haven't got the guts to come out and say it. Well, I'm just about sick of you clumsy innuendos.
Now, just a moment. On Friday, I put £150 in this box. On Saturday, I find this.
I get some lovely things happen to me sometimes. I was struck on the head with a handbag by an old lady the other day who said to me, she said, "You're very nasty to Joe Sugden," she said, "and you know bugger all about farming." That was it, that summed it all up beautifully, I thought.
Emmerdale Farm's other location is here in the village of Beckingdale. Now, you won't find a village of that name on any map of Yorkshire, but this is a real village nonetheless. And as you can imagine, the pub is the center of village life here, and the proprietor knows everything that's going on.
Sandy's having it off with with Phil Pearce. That's the big gossip at the moment. She's moved in with him and he's a married man. He has a wife and a child. I run the local pub, the Woolpack, in partnership with Henry Wilkes. I'm always entangled with the local poacher turned gamekeeper, who is Seth Armstrong. He's the gamekeeper for NY Estates.
How do you get along with the villagers? Do they like you? Do you know them?
They like us very much, yes, but they're not very keen on the tourists. And you can imagine a small village of this size being invaded by about 76 coaches in one day.
Well, I'm just saying Amos looks a lot younger in person than what he does when he appears on the telly.
They come from all over. I think there's some from Wiltshire today and from London today. You know, they come from all over, and they don't even know that there's going to be filming here because they only film about 1 or 2 days a fortnight, so they don't even know that the stars are going to be here.
Killing!
As the cameras turn on episode 1105 of Emmerdale Farm, we'll leave the peace and tranquility of Beckendale Village for a look at something quite different on British television. Marilyn, how would you describe Calendar as a show?
Well, really, I suppose it's a programme which brings all the news and views and thoughts of the region to the people of that region. We cover quite a big area, really. We cover Yorkshire, Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire, Lincolnshire, Humberside. It's a huge area, about 6 million viewers. It is anything and everything. I mean, we have the hard news stories, the disasters, the accidents. But on the other side, we get all the nice little stories as well, the good things that have happened to people during the day as well.
We watched you earlier today doing a report on a fashion trade fair, but then the thing that people won't see was you running in here with 50 minutes left to go and getting it on the air.
Yes, that does tend to happen quite a lot because the deadlines obviously get tighter and tighter. And now we're on the electronic news gathering as opposed to film. Then the deadlines can go even further back. Calendar's a very popular show, and we have a very loyal, long-standing audience. I mean, I've been on this programme now for, 14 years now, and people regard you as almost part of their family.
Of course, the Duchess of York is still setting trends, isn't she?
Absolutely, yeah. So we've got the Fergie look there, the Edwardian styles, which is obviously coming through into the bridal wear as well.
Yes, but will those flared trousers and wide lapels jackets I bought 15 years ago be back in fashion next year? That's what I want to know. Anyway, while I ponder that, let's go to the news desk for the rest of the day's news.
When we come back, Shelley is going to take us behind the scenes with an international musical star, and we'll see more examples of British television comedy and drama when Focus on Britain continues.
Yeah, it's all right for you?
Okay, again, looking that way. That's it. Hang on that way.
Right. Well, Chris, I'm now on 2, 3, 4.
Music specials are very popular here in Britain, and you can almost always find one in production. This is a rehearsal for a Yorkshire television special starring CLEO LAINE and her husband, Johnny Dankworth. Miss LAINE recently received a Tony nomination for her new Broadway musical, The Mystery of Edwin Drood.
I'll be waiting
Well, it's about British music. Although we have an American performing and a Frenchman performing, we're singing all British songs, right from, we thought it would be rather nice to sort of complement the British songwriters.
You're very versatile too. I mean, how do you go back and forth between so many different kinds of entertainment?
I don't know. I think I like the challenge of going from one thing to the other. It's so much nicer if you're in the business to do different things. And if you're an actress, which I think that I am, you do different things. I mean, to do one thing all the time, as far as I'm concerned, is boring.
From its musicals to its dramas, many of Yorkshire's original productions are seen as potential moneymakers overseas.
I think good television drama is truly international, and we've done a series of really quite major films that have been or are going to be shown in America, which are romance stories. Cheryl Ladd did a wonderful film for us called Romance on the Orient Express, which is exactly what you would expect. She falls in love with a stranger on the train.
I never stopped thinking about you. Wondering where you were, what you were doing. Wondering if you ever thought of me.
We've got quite a number of major productions which are specifically intended for England, although obviously one hopes they'll go all over the place. But Dirk Bogarde has written and starred in a film based on a Graham Greene short story, which is called Maybe Borrow Your Husband, and he's in it. The girl is Charlotte Attenborough, who's Sir Richard Attenborough's daughter.
Borrow my husband.
The enemy is within the citadel. Poor little sods. Take him away. Take him right away.
We think that there is actually a future for a lot of drama, particularly because these are huge, but even by anybody's standards, these are huge budget productions. It's bound to happen that we'll do more and more of that in association with the network stations in America.
We have met before, yes? Oh, I'm sorry. It's so very rare nowadays to find anything which actually makes one laugh out loud. I seem to know your face so well.
What's on your comedy schedule in the immediate future?
Well, we've got one show called Room at the Bottom, which I hope might travel well, and it's the story of a truly dreadful television station run by a tyrant who's played by Keith Barron. And the other star is Jimmy Boland. He plays the head of drama, and he becomes the absolute slave of the TV station tyrant.
We want you to come up with 6 ideas. Original, offbeat and new, but at the same time safe and familiar. I refer to our staple diet, the game show.
I'm not doing game shows.
Now I can hear you saying to yourself, I'm not doing game shows. I'm saying to you, oh yes, you bloody well are. So get up off your ass, lad. 6 ideas by Friday, or we'll cut you adrift in a sea of unemployment. Bye-bye.
In the United States, programs like 60 Minutes and 2020 are few and far between. But here in Britain, they're a regular part of the daily program schedule. And here's a sample of some of them produced by Yorkshire Television.
Tonight on First Tuesday.
The armies of the great allies have joined hands together.
40 years on, the first Russian at that historic meeting is now a Red Army general. And in the backwoods of California, the man he met on the banks of the Elbe when Nazi Germany was cut in two. And we ask what caused the cancers in the local children.
If I were a parent in the village, I would be concerned about my children.
This thing is my sleeping shack. It's built out
in Britain, the audience for documentaries is part of our culture and our traditions. And I think it's been encouraged and nurtured and developed by the various broadcasting institutions. So now there's lots of documentaries on. There's virtually one on every night on one of the channels. And they really do quite well in audience terms. I think there's a myth that somehow we have lots of documentaries here and people in America are not interested in documentaries. I think that television viewers, if they're given a chance to appreciate documentaries, which can be thoughtful but can still be entertaining, I really think there's a big audience in both countries for it.
2 years ago, it was Joe Pawlowski's last wish to be buried by the River Elbe. What happened here on that April day 40 years ago had haunted him all his life. Throughout the Cold War, in Chicago, he tried to tell his indifferent countrymen of the great moment when Russians and Americans met as friends, and when one half of a divided world had once made contact with the other.
I think our first responsibility is to make programs for the British viewer, to try and stimulate debate and satisfy the British documentary watcher. But nonetheless, as competition gets fiercer from television stations both here and in the sky, and as the costs escalate, we've got to look more and more towards the international market. We have a regular monthly magazine series called First Tuesday, which is a little bit like American 60 Minutes, but perhaps more documentary style in its making. In the past, we've won awards for a series about British mental institutions, where there was some brutality going on. We've got a reputation for investigative journalism in our documentary department. We've won 7 or 8 awards for a film about nuclear pollution.
Every year, Britain's nuclear power stations send over 1,000 tons of burnt-up nuclear fuel to Windscale. And from the other side of the world, the Japanese send off their nuclear waste to Britain. So do Italy, Germany, Switzerland, Spain, Holland and Sweden. Orders worth £2.5 billion. Nuclear waste reprocessing is a controversial industry. Only the French continue it on a scale approaching ours. Windscale is the world's nuclear laundry.
One of the best-known interviewers on British television is also a businesswoman and a medical doctor, Miriam Stoppard.
I am television's greatest fan. It is the greatest educational tool at the moment known to man. And that's why I'm in it, because I want to get the message out. I think information is light, and television has a great responsibility, just like journalists do.
If you had that proverbial magic wand and you could change television any way you want, how would you change it?
You can't actually feed people a diet which only you want. But one of the things that I do think you have to provoke, and this is what I hope my program does, is to provoke conversation after it.
Dr. Stoppard, you are described to me as the best interviewer on British television. Of all the interviews that you've done, which subject did you like best?
I'd have to say with Mrs. Thatcher, our Prime Minister. And that was an exploration for me, and I really and truly believe it was an exploration for her, because she'd never been asked the kind of questions I was asking.
I remember when my father was turned off that council, making a speech for the last time, very emotional. In honour, I took out this gown. In honour, I lay it down. That's how I felt.
We've compressed a lot of television into this half hour just to give you an idea of some of the things on the air here in Britain. But not every program is homegrown. Shows like Cheers and Dallas and Dynasty and Hill Street Blues are just as popular here as they are back home.
Also, I think we've seen clearly that while television here keeps its essential British character, it reinforces the fact that we, Britons and Americans, still have a great deal in common. I'm Joseph Benty. For Shelley Carabel and me, thank you for joining us on this edition of Focus on Britain.
I refer to our staple diet, the game show.
I'm not doing game shows.
Now, I can hear you saying to yourself, I'm not doing game shows. I'm saying to you, oh, yes, you bloody well are. So get up off your ass, lad. 6 ideas by Friday, or we'll cut you adrift in a sea of unemployment. Bye-bye.